All right, welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. And in today's video, I have got quite an action-packed doozy. There is just a filthy amount of misinformation flying around after Elon Musk's infamous tweet a couple days back that Tesla is no longer accepting Bitcoin as a payment method for cars. So in today's video, we're going to break down, what happened. What actually is the truth, right? If you spend more than 60 seconds researching, what is the kind of outcome that you will find? And then lastly, right, these are superlative times. And so today's video warranted a superlative title. I'm going to talk about not just what the truth is around Bitcoin and the environment, but why Bitcoin is actually critical if you care at all about the environment. So it's going to be a great one. It's going to be action-packed. I'm going to pack a lot into this video, so buckle up. Welcome back to those fellow raging capitalists who are returning. And to those who are new to the channel, welcome. It is fantastic to have you here. I hope you find this content useful and interesting. If you do, consider subscribing. I put out content around Bitcoin and related topics every single week. And I think this message today in particular is crucial to propagate and get out to more folks. So your support will help make that happen. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right into what happened. So let's take a look at what actually happened. Here is the infamous tweet from Mr. Musk on May 12th. So just about a week ago. Tesla has suspended vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. We are concerned about rapidly increasing use of fossil fuels for Bitcoin mining and transactions, especially coal, which has the worst emissions of any fuel. Cryptocurrency is a good idea on many levels, and we believe it has a promising future, but this cannot come at great cost to the environment. Tesla will not be selling any Bitcoin, and we intend to use it for transactions as soon as mining transitions to more sustainable energy. We are also looking at other cryptocurrencies that use less than 1% of Bitcoin's energy slash transaction. So this is pretty interesting, right? Not only is nearly every word in this entire tweet misinformed and wrong, but it also comes just a few weeks after Elon agreed on the notion that Bitcoin can incentivize renewable energy. So if we look at this tweet on, again, April 22nd, Jack Dorsey sent this out on April 21st saying Bitcoin incentivizes renewable energy. This is in response to a white paper that Square and ARK Invest collaborated on, which is quite good. I'm going to put the links to these different tweet threads in the description down below so you can take a closer look, to which Elon responds, true. So very interesting, right? So something's kind of going on here, right? You don't just kind of stack 1.5 billion US dollars worth of Bitcoin on your company's balance sheet without having done any due diligence of any kind. And his sort of subsequent tweets after that main one were similarly puzzling and just really demonstrate a total, utter lack of understanding about this entire space. And so you have to wonder, like, is it possible that Elon could truly not know anything about this? I think that has to be unlikely. Like, we, should probably give the world's richest man and someone who's, trying to take humanity to Mars the benefit of the doubt. And so perhaps there's a different kind of narrative at play. Elizabeth outlines one of the ones that I think is more plausible, where she's essentially saying, Elon is really reacting to changes in the renewable energy credit market. So today, as she explains, Tesla makes most of its profit from selling renewable energy credits, not from selling cars, which are still, arguably loss-making or break-even at best. And so she's talking about how that renewable energy credit market is changing, with some of the big players kind of making progress on reducing their CO2 emissions. And so, if Tesla's kind of renewable energy credit market empire is winding down, what is Elon to do? And this is probably also related to what we can safely assume was probably some negative feedback from government agencies that say, oh, Tesla, why are you promoting Bitcoin? Blah, 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 blah. So who really knows what the truth is? Something's going on here. I don't think Elon is truly totally oblivious to how any of this works. But in any case, why hypothesize? Let's jump into what the truth actually is. So first, I truly do sympathize with folks who, kind of knee-jerk think that, oh, wow, Bitcoin uses, more energy than country X. That sounds wasteful, right? I do sympathize with that, but it's a total act of intellectual laziness to not kind of research the topic more than that very surface level idea that's going to be propagated very strongly in mainstream media. And so we have to there's a number of questions we have to ask, right? What is a trust minimized, censorship resistant, decentralized money system worth? Like, what is that worth, right? You can't get something for nothing. And so what is that? What are those incredible benefits worth? What is it worth to help billions of people around the world preserve the output of their time, right? In terms of their monetary savings. And so these are pretty hard, squishy benefits to quantify, right? While the cost in terms of energy usage is really easy to quantify. And so again, that's why people kind of latch on to what's easy without thinking about what's a little more difficult to quantify and think about. So let's pick this apart a little bit. I want to talk about why energy expenditure is necessary for a hard money system as well as a decentralized hard money system. I want to talk about the relative costs, right? Bitcoin's kind of energy cost in relation to the existing financial system, right? Which is a comparison no one ever stops to do. And then we'll talk about kind of the energy mix and some of these more tactical bits. So, firstly, this idea of hard money is very analogous to why gold has been used for human commercial activity for thousands of years. There's real difficulty in unearthing new supply of gold, right? There's, whole kind of massive industry of gold mining, and it takes real energy to produce new units of gold supply. And there's a good reason for that. Think of the very reason that many of us are so disdainful towards fiat. It's so easy for someone to basically press a button and have new, currency units of the US dollar or whatever fiat currency created at, the click of a button. And so anytime you have an ability to create new units of a currency, in such an easy fashion without having to prove any sort of work has been done, you could quickly see how this leads to poor incentives. And indeed, it leads to what we see today where governments can dilute your savings at any time by simply a couple keystrokes. And so on that basis, hard money requires some amount of energy to prove that it is truly difficult to produce new units of a currency. That's kind of part one. Part two, though, is also as it relates to the decentralized nature of money, that Bitcoin is sort of the first of its kind. And for that, I'm going to go to a really excellent tweet thread from Gigi. I'm going to literally just read this because it's so good. And again, I'm going to link this in the description down below. He says, a failure to understand proof of work is a failure to understand Bitcoin. Decentralized systems, by definition, do not have a single source of truth. Satoshi's breakthrough was to build a system that allows all participants to zero in on the same truth independently. Proof of work is what allows this to happen. The point of proof of work is to create an irrefutable history. If two histories compete, the one with the most work embedded in it wins. The chain with the most work is the truth by definition. This is what we call Nakamoto consensus. Why does this work? In short, because work requires energy. You can't cheat it. You can't argue with it. You can't lie about it. The proof that you did the work is self-evident in the outcome of the work itself. In Bitcoin, work is computation, right? The machines taking all these guesses to sort of earn the right to mine the next block to the blockchain. Not any kind of computation, but computation that has no shortcut, guessing, right? There's no way around this. You just have to randomly guess. There is no shortcut because there is no progress. Every guess stands on its own. The beautiful thing is that the work itself is embedded in the solution. The data speaks for itself. The map is the territory. There is no external source of truth required. Said another way, there's no kind of central agency that needs to kind of step in and say, hey, yes, this is a legitimate block with legitimate transactions within it. The work is implicit in the data due to the probabilistic nature of guessing. Other mechanisms, such as proof of stake, which is what Ethereum is moving to, which is what many other cryptocurrencies have and promote as a greener consensus mechanism, right? However, the issue is that proof of stake doesn't have that property. You can never be sure that what you are looking at is actually the truth, since there is no external cost to create an alternative truth. So and we'll talk about this more in this thread, but proof of stake, I mean, it's essentially the fiat consensus mechanism. Proof of stake literally says whoever stakes the most amount of that currency has commensurate kind of voting power and control over the protocol. So whoever has the most controls the most. Does that sound fair or like anything that we want? Computation, as Gigi continues, is the only bridge between the realm of information to the physical realm. So in another way, energy expenditure is giving these newly mined Bitcoin that become a reward as part of mining a new block. It gives them sort of weight and legitimacy and a sort of reality to it. When dealing with information, all we have is information, and the transformation of information, computation. Computation requires energy. Energy is the bridge. Energy is real. Remove this bridge to the physical world and you will stay in fantasy land. You can't tell what actually happened. You will have to trust others to tell you what happened. You'll have to trust the folks with the most amount of that currency to tell you what the truth is, right? You can't verify it for yourself. You have to rely on trust. Proof of stake has plenty of other problems that he goes into, which we won't talk about here. And he continues in his thread. Proof of work solves these exact problems. It decentralizes the selection process, creates physical proof of what happened, has real externalized costs and decentralized time. He links his article, Bitcoin is Time, which I've covered in another video, which is very, very, very good. Highly recommend it. The question of whether proof of work is wasteful or not can't be asked without understanding the problem it solves. Understanding the problem properly will lead you to the conclusion that there is no other way to solve it in a trustless manner. Thus, the question becomes, as I was outlining earlier, how useful is trustless, or more accurately, trust minimized digital sound money? Is it worth the energy expenditure? For fridges, cars, smartphones, myriad other things, society answers this question in the affirmative. For Bitcoin, those who understand the societal benefits of sound and censorship-resistant money answer in the affirmative. So to summarize, proof of work is not only useful, but absolutely essential. Trustless digital money can't work without it. It can't. You always need an anchor to the physical realm. Without this anchor, a truthful history that is self-evident is impossible. Energy is the only anchor we have. Proof of work is trusting physics and math to determine what happened. Proof of stake is trusting humans to determine what happened, which is exactly the system today. So again, that was a lot, but I wanted to read that bit by bit because it is absolutely crucial to understand why energy expenditure in this context is not only important, but absolutely necessary. Another way to think about it is all that kind of energy expenditure is serving as a kind of cryptographic wall of protection and security in securing everyone's account balances in their various Bitcoin wallets. And so think about and we'll get into this in just a moment, think about all the infrastructure, all the kind of bank buildings and bank vaults and cars that we use to transfer, fiat back and forth to secure locations. Think of all the overwhelming amount of security. Think of the entire U.S. military, which arguably exists in its current form to support the petrodollar system, i.e., enforcing that countries use the dollar when purchasing energy from energy producers such as Saudi Arabia, etc. Right? Add all of that up, and Bitcoin starts to look incredibly efficient. Let's also get into some of the other aspects. So we just covered this idea that energy expenditure is crucial for hard money, and crucial even more so for a decentralized, trustless, or trust minimized hard money system. Let's get into a couple other points. If you do nothing else, I would encourage you to check out this compilation from Asian Hodl PhD, where they list out kind of a lot of the really, really good articles on Bitcoin energy consumption. Again, a lot of this video is kind of pulling from various bits and pieces of this. But the piece I want to kind of hone in on is this idea of relative costs. So this was admittedly a study and paper done back in 2014 by an Oxford PhD candidate. And so again, these are a bit dated, but I think from a relative standpoint, they do really well. And so, it's saying, I'll again link this in the description, there has been a lot of uncertainty surrounding the sustainability of the Bitcoin network, with this fascinating nascent technology facing several unsubstantiated claims by uninformed individuals that Bitcoin is highly unsustainable from a social, economic, and environmental point of view. This paper aims to disprove or support these claims about the sustainability of the Bitcoin network, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so what I want to call attention to is this, these comparisons of annual economic costs and environmental costs in particular. So if we zero in on this kind of middle table, we can see the amount of energy and associated tons of CO2 produced from gold mining, right? So, just compare the 54 million plus the 4 million, so 58 million in total associated with the kind of gold system, to the 0.6 million for Bitcoin. You also look at just all the energy and effort that it takes to support the existing banking system. What I was saying earlier, think of all the armored vans out there, the kind of paper currency, minting new coins and new paper dollars. All of this cost can be estimated, and you can see that it's just not even, it's orders of magnitude different. There's also a couple of interesting, socioeconomic measures here around, worker deaths, right? Think of like the physicality of gold mining and, what can happen in, these far-flung places in the world where there's active gold mining, corruption, money laundering, right? A lot of people will point at Bitcoin and say, oh, it's used for drug lords and, this and that. And while that's always going to be true for any form of money, it's absolutely negligible compared to what happens in fiat. There's fraud. We're not even going to talk about inflation until later in the video. But anyway, I hope that this provides some eye-opening context about Bitcoin's sort of cost in energy and CO2 terms relative to the existing system. It's just not even close. And so when people knee-jerk say that, oh, Bitcoin's wasteful to whom? Wasteful compared to what? Because if we were to use Bitcoin, we would be rapidly saving on CO2 emissions relative to what occurs in the existing system. The next piece I want to get to, again, and this is rapid fire, I'm hitting you with a lot of information in this video, is around the energy mix. And so going back to Elon's tweet, just so woefully uninformed. This is from the Harvard Business Review that Nick Carter published just a little bit ago. And he goes into how it is quite difficult actually to kind of really pinpoint the exact energy mix. What we essentially have is a geographic analysis of where mining is occurring. And then from there, you can infer the energy mix based on those different jurisdictions where the mining is occurring. even that is a little bit tricky, right? You can't just kind of extrapolate and say, oh, like China's total energy mix is therefore the energy mix that we can assume for the mining happening in China for Bitcoin, because that's actually not true. There's actually a lot of hydroelectric energy that fuels Bitcoin mining. But in any case, different studies would point to anywhere between kind of 40 to 70%, as you can see in the second paragraph, of Bitcoin mining is from carbon neutral, sustainable energy sources. Even if we take the lower end of that bound, the close to 40%, as Nick says, that's still almost twice as high as the U.S. energy grid. And so, sure, there's more room to go, as we'll talk about. But to say that Bitcoin is kind of growing in its use of coal is just completely and utterly incorrect. And in fact, as it exists today, Bitcoin is actually relatively renewable versus the kind of global average energy mix. The final bit in this section I want to hit on is just this idea that, okay, fine, but like, what if more and more and more people use Bitcoin? It's just going to explode. We're going to boil the ocean. We're going to kill all the animals in the world. And so people are kind of clinging to this idea that Bitcoin's energy expenditure is proportional to the number of transactions going through the system. And this is also a woefully misinformed view. Lynn Alden breaks this down really well. She says Bitcoin's total energy usage is primarily determined from market cap and difficulty adjustments, not transaction volume. In other words, the marginal Bitcoin transaction has virtually no impact on Bitcoin's total energy usage. So what she's saying here is that the mining process, right, like why all the energy is going into this is for a miner to place the next block in the blockchain. And so within that block, there are, many different transactions. And furthermore, as the value of Bitcoin appreciates, the total kind of economic density of those blocks increases more and more and more. And so if anything, it's becoming ever more efficient in terms of energy expenditure per transaction, if we wanted to think of it in that way, over time, right? And so, again, that was, I know, a lot, but just to recap, we looked at why energy expenditure is so crucial for a hard money system and particularly necessary and essential for a decentralized hard money system. We looked at the kind of relative costs of Bitcoin compared with the existing financial system, which is completely negligible. And we took a look at, this idea of energy per transaction really being a poor metric to kind of measure in the case of Bitcoin's, energy expenditure. Said another way, if 10x, 100x more people adopt Bitcoin, the additional energy expenditure is going to increase by far, 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 far less than that. And all of this is sort of underpinned by this question of like, what is it worth to have a truly decentralized, trust minimized, censorship resistant, sound money that's accessible to all of mankind? I think many of us would say it's just a total no-brainer. Now, with all of that said, I want to finish this video with the last section on not just what Bitcoin's kind of energy truth is, which we hopefully just went through, but also why a lot of folks in the community are even more optimistic that Bitcoin is crucial in driving favorable climate outcomes. So let's dive into that next. All right, so let's put the cherry on this video. Bitcoin is essential for achieving better climate outcomes. Why is that the case? Number one, as Jack so succinctly put it in the tweet we saw earlier, Bitcoin really does incentivize renewable energy. Why is that? Think about a waterfall in a remote place in Africa. far away from any sort of population center. And so there's really no incentive to kind of try and tap into that, because we have to build the whole infrastructure that gets the hydroelectric power all the way to the population center. And it's just, we're going to lose a bunch of energy in the process, right? Because energy can only be transferred on an electric grid but so far. And so to date, there really hasn't been any sort of incentive to tap into that type of renewable energy. But now with Bitcoin mining, you have a direct economic incentive to directly translate that hydroelectric energy into a highly valuable, scarce monetary asset. And so you are literally translating energy into money. And all you need is, a pretty small scale little mining rig, as opposed to kind of all the massive infrastructure that would otherwise be needed to actually tap into that renewable energy source. So that is super exciting. I think what Bitcoin's going to do with solar is also going to be really, really exciting. It's going to really, really accelerate the adoption of solar. And by the way, as a side note, that is really what it's going to take to become an interplanetary species. Once we're able to properly harness all the energy coming from the sun itself, I think it's right, the Kardashev scale, right now we're, not even kind of on the scale, but that is going to be necessary. And so Bitcoin is only going to accelerate that. So Bitcoin provides a direct economic incentive to tap into these cheap energies, renewable energy sources that we otherwise haven't had an incentive to do, right? You could do all the Paris Accords you want. You could pat yourself on the back for, all the recycling you're doing, but, none of that is going to accelerate this process more than having a direct economic incentive, which Bitcoin mining provides. That's part one. Part two, there's an immense amount of waste in the current way that we, generate and propagate electricity in the energy grid. And so I forget what the exact percentage is, but maybe it's 8%. Don't quote me on that. Of energy is just totally lost, right? It's just totally lost given how we, generate electricity and then have to get it to where it needs to go. A whole bunch of energy is just sort of lost in the process that far, far, far exceeds the global, Bitcoin energy usage. And an even more explicit form of that is from Denver Bitcoin. I'll link this again in the description down below. Check out this video, which is a news article on how they're using Bitcoin mining rigs to capture flared gas. So gas that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere is being captured by and fueling Bitcoin mining rigs. How cool is that? Now, that's all fine and good, right? Capturing flared gas, incentivizing cheap renewable energy sources. But arguably the biggest impact of them all is what none other than Jeff Booth is outlining so succinctly here. Inflation equals climate change. What does he mean by this? The entire paradigm and current financial system, which requires growth to survive, right? This whole entire debt house of cards requires ever more growth in order to sustain itself. Under such a paradigm, how could we possibly think that we're ever going to achieve our climate objectives? So, all this conspicuous consumption that's driven by depreciating currency, interest rates that are, as low as they are, all of that is producing an immense amount of waste. And so if you haven't read The Price of Tomorrow, I absolutely urge you to pick up a copy. I have a link to where you can buy it on Amazon in the description. I urge you to go check it out. It is the best written piece on the entire topic of inflation versus deflation and its various impacts to society, including climate. So I'm just going to leave it there and let Jeff do what he does. So with that, let's go ahead and kind of close out the video and do a final recap. All right, we swung for the fences in this one. Just to recap, we took a look at what initiated all this kind of debate. I think it's actually a good thing, honestly. It is now incentivized folks in the community to just get really serious about providing accurate, truthful information about what's actually going on. So net in the long run, I think this will end up being a good thing. We took a look in this video in particular at Bitcoin's energy profile, at its relative energy expenditure versus the the sort of energy expenditure of the existing system. And we also took a look at why Bitcoin is not only not wasteful, but is actually essential at achieving any sort of climate outcome via accelerating the adoption of renewable energy sources by having this kind of profound economic incentive to tap into them. And then secondly, by supporting this kind of deflationary world of abundance where your money is appreciating in value all the time and technology and products and services are getting cheaper all the time. And this is just a totally different paradigm to the world we exist in today. I could probably do a whole separate video on the price of tomorrow. Again, the book from Jeff Booth. Find the Amazon link in the description down below and get yourself a copy. I cannot possibly recommend it enough. But we'll save that for another day. I hope you guys liked this content. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, reactions, all of that really helps the algorithm push this out to more people. I think this is just such an absolutely crucial message to propagate because what's happening is a lot of kind of under-informed folks are just panic selling based on these nonsense kind of headlines, and so it really is tragic to see. But there you have it. Let me know what you think. We'll leave this video here for now. As always, every sack counts. And until next time, I'll see you then.